Hello, my name is Catherine Scott Ashby, and I will be your lecturer on the topic of art as an inspiration for music. Over the course of history, composers and musicians have drawn inspiration from a variety of sources. For example, Robert Schumann and Johannes Brahms each adopted the pianist Clara Wieck as their muse, who inspired some of their most famous works. And there are composers who have been inspired by nature. Edvard Grieg, upon gazing at the mountains that surrounded his hometown of Bergen, Norway, composed the sweeping piano piece Tilveren. Other composers have let memories and emotions of a traumatic event inspire their work. Dmitri Shostakovich composed his Seventh Symphony while his town of Leningrad, Russia was under siege in 1942. Yes, composers have been inspired by beautiful humans, nature, and memories. Today, we are going to look at how art has inspired composers. Music and art have often intersected, but in different ways. In some cases, art movements have inspired composers. For example, Claude Debussy was greatly inspired by the Impressionist movement. Beginning in the late 1800s, Impressionist painters wanted their work to reflect the world in which they lived. Their work was characterized by small, obvious brushstrokes and a focus on light. Claude Debussy took the ideals of the Impressionists and inserted them into his music. Listen to this excerpt from Prelude to Afternoon of a Faun, and note the free rhythm that invokes the same effect as the Impressionists' use of light. Another example of art movements that inspired composers is the Expressionist movement, which inspired the early 20th century composer Alban Berg. Originating from a group of German painters at the end of the 19th century, Expressionists sought to express the emotional and psychological effects of the world. Expressionists tried to convey inner life through harsh and jarring brushstrokes, as seen in this work by Franz Marc. Listen to this excerpt from Berg's Wozzeck, Act 3, Scene 5, and listen for the sinister undertones, eerie soprano voice, and foreboding strings. We just looked at how art movements have inspired composers. Now we will look at how individual works of art have inspired compositions. The danse macabre art of the Middle Ages inspired Camille Saint-Saëns's tone poem for orchestra, also named Danse Macabre. Also called the Dance of Death, Danse Macabre was a medieval allegorical concept of the all-conquering and equalizing power of death. This concept was often expressed in the form of drawings and paintings in which both the living and the dead danced into or around graves. You are about to listen to an excerpt from Danse Macabre. Notice the energy of the piece as the dead and living dance faster and faster. You can hear the dancing of the skeletons as the xylophones play, reminiscent of rattling bones. As another example of individual works of art inspiring composers, we will look at the famous triptych painted by Botticelli in the late 15th century, which inspired Ottorino Respighi's symphony, the Botticelli Triptych. Look at the three paintings, La Primavera, or Spring, La Adorazione dei Magi, the Adoration of the Magi, and La Nascita di Venere, the Birth of Venus. Listen closely to the following three excerpts. Note the sprightly dance tune in the opening movement representing La Primavera. In the second, you will likely recognize the Advent hymn, O Come, Emmanuel. And finally, picture gentle waves carrying in the goddess Venus as you listen to the slowly coalescing melodic materials that seem to drift from foreground to background. We have looked at two ways in which art has inspired composers and their compositions. Well, composers have returned the favor by inspiring artists. Vasily Kandinsky was a Russian artist who painted in the 20th century and pioneered abstract art. For Kandinsky, music and color were one and the same. He had synesthesia, a neurological phenomenon in which he could see shapes and colors when he heard music. This led to Kandinsky's composition series, a total of 10 paintings, each based on a piece of music. Listen to this excerpt from Lohengrin by Richard Wagner as you look at composition number 8. Look at the circles that pulse with color as the horns play, and see the paths of the lines as the strings rise and fall. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture that took a look at art movements that have inspired composers, art pieces that have inspired compositions, and musical pieces that have inspired artists. I am leaving you with the Botticelli triptych, both the symphony and the paintings.